On the 25th of April, to mark Italy's Liberation Day, we chose to show documentary Bella Ciao, Song of Rebellion, by Millstream Films. Bella Ciao traces the history of the iconic revolutionary song, from its obscure roots through its use by partisans in Italy, and its growing popularity and perhaps commercialisation through things like its use in the series Money Heist or random Korean adverts for burgers. We were absolutely delighted to have Paul Russell and Andrea Vogt come and join us for a post-film discussion about the film, about Bella Ciao and the song's legacy, about its origins and what it means to so many people around the world, especially in the context of the rise of the far right in Italy.
Okay, wonderful. So, obviously, I think we can all agree that was glorious. Very, very informative. It was wonderful to watch. I had the privilege of watching it at home as well today. And yeah, it's an absolutely wonderful film, very expansive. So, thank you so much. This is Andrea Vogt, director, and Paul Russell, producer. I think big round of applause for them. No, it was absolutely glorious. It had special resonance with me. My father was a communist during the Second World War, and then involved with the partisans as well. And I was fascinated. I had to laugh to myself at Eve's story, him being a communist and his wife a Roman Catholic, because my father was a communist and my mother was a Christian, and it was an interesting household growing up with those two polar views. So, oh really? Okay. But it's a wonderful film. I mean, what we're going to do, I have a few questions myself, and then we'll throw it open to the audience and see if anyone has anything for Andrea and Paul. But I think first off, I mean, it must have been a extremely expansive project to produce. It must have taken years, surely, and it must have also evolved throughout because of the inclusion of Money Heist. I mean, how long did it take you really from start to finish to produce the film?
It started in. This is working.
Bit closer.
It started work. We started working on it in 2019. Actually, we just finished another big film, and our co-producer Tony Verona of Alla Bianca, who actually manages the rights to Bella Ciao as owned by the Ernesto Di Martino Foundation, told us about it, and so we decided it would be a good idea to make a film about it. And then we started researching it. Then COVID happened, so we had lots of time, and it became more and more fascinating by the day. And not only more and more fascinating, but also had more and more implications for today. That's why we were so fascinated by it. We thought it was a great story to tell, and it's obviously because of COVID. It took us a lot longer than we would usually have taken. But on the other hand, that also gave us an opportunity to go deeper into the roots, and I'll pass the mic back to Andrea on that.
I would say that it baffled us. We found it was a mystery, so we couldn't solve it. We couldn't find out where the song came from exactly, and that created more and more desire to do more research. I'm from an investigative journalism background, and I wanted documents. I wanted to see paper, witnesses, and so we kept digging. We found the priest who had written down about the massacre. We found the letter from Lydia Stocks, who was the Russian partisan. We cross-referenced that with the commander, Paolo Orlandini, the partisan commander, who actually passed away 3 weeks after we conducted that interview. So thank goodness we were able to encapsulate it, because those kinds of testimonies they're disappearing. There are very few partisans, commanders left, and we were so glad to be able to catch that and protect that story, and then cross-reference it with documents to be able to prove one element of the mystery, which is that the song was sung by partisans. And part of the problem today is there is a lot of historical revisionism. We're seeing a lot of people saying, well, no, it wasn't really sung by the partisans, opinion this, opinion that. Can we prove it? We wanted to do that. We wanted to go deep into the research to say, yes, this was a song sung during the war.
Why do you think there is that revisionism now? I mean, I know the answer.
Well, the revisionism goes back a long way. it's not just the result of the recent elections. The revisionism is to do with an attempt to. It goes back to when the Christian and the communist elements in Italian society merged, and there's an attempt on the one side to detach the this symbol of the left from that particular party, and if you can prove that it wasn't sung by their partisans, then it hasn't got those roots in Italian culture that means it is sung at every occasion on the 1st of May and on the 25th of April. If that doesn't happen, then you lose a symbolic, and you know how much symbolism is important in all politics. You lose an important symbol of the resistance, and they're trying to basically merge the resistance into the background and say, well, you know, the fascists and the communists are almost the same, and it's, you know, and that's what's happening today. I mean, you can see it under for yourself.
No, absolutely, and I think it's a very important point. I also just want to touch a bit more on the film, because there was also an awful lot of people involved behind the project. Do you want to just talk about who else was involved in
Yes.
getting this together?
Yeah, I have to thank a lot of people, apart from Andrea, of course, who's very important in this in the whole project. And but we have two people in particular from our who are also our partners in our company, Alex Scorza and Alessandro Lucchini, who were fundamental. Alex Scorza is the editor, who brought together all those funny moments that I like, and merged them all into a visual narrative that we followed, which keeps the attention going. At least I speak for myself. I tend to be a little bit more too intellectual and often lose the plot of the visual plot. Then we have mainly Tony Verona, who is the owner of Alla Bianca music group, who saved Bella Ciao from oblivion at the end of the 1980s, when Ernesto de Martino was going bankrupt, and he saved the whole collection by giving them some money and started commercializing the song, saved it, and allowed us to use it in our film. So we have exclusive rights. And of course, there are all those other people that we've met. You know, there must be 30 interviews in there, and each one dedicated a couple of hours to us. So very important.
But how did you select what to? If you're talking a couple of hours per interview, how on earth did you select what to put in then? That must have been an arduous task, maybe.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. Each interview was at least 2 hours. I mean, 2 hours with Paolo Perangeli or Giovanna Marini. We put in, for example, the anecdote about Pasolini, which is not really about Bella Ciao, but how could we leave it on the cutting room floor? We had to put it in the film. And so that was a very, very arduous task. It was probably the hardest part. And Paolo Orlandini as well. I would say that I just wanted to also thank the Association of Italian Partisans, ANPI, who gave us patronage and who decided that this film actually represented the truth about Bella Ciao from their perspective, and they were very supportive and helped us at least morally. We self-financed the film, but their help helped open up a lot of theaters. Also, the archival was very difficult as far as we got archival from the United States military and government archives, the British Pathé. Also, we went to the workers, the workers' union in Italy and Rome to get the old footage of the Festa dell'Unità and the footage of the singers, for example. Then we went to Germany. We went to the German Bundesarchiv to get the very strange festival of political song where you have the German folk singers singing it back in the 1970s. So that also was a surprise. The research took us to Berlin. We didn't expect to find a German angle to Bella Ciao, but it popped out at us. And we could have continued. They're singing it now in the piazzas in Ukraine, in Iran. Our film came out before that, but I think we haven't heard the end of the song, definitely.
No, I don't think so at all. And it's the history behind it is fascinating. I mean, there's clearly debate maybe over, not least the origin of the song, but the meaning of the song, because we see during the partisans it was resistance, then after the Second World War a song of freedom. What, after researching it so extensively, and you must have heard the song in its various guises, I wouldn't want to count how many times, surely. What is your interpretation of Bella Ciao, do you think? What is it? Is it a love song, as the gentleman said towards the end? Is it a song of resistance? Is it a song of freedom? What for you, after these years of research, is Bella Ciao?
I believe it's a song of resistance, but that can be, like Giovanna Marini said, that can be adapted to whichever marginalized party is singing it. So the women were singing it in the Risaia, and I do believe that was pre-World War II. And so I think it began, like she said, as a song of resistance in the rice paddy fields, and then moved on to a song of resistance that the partisans were singing in World War II, and then moved on to be a song of resistance in Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring. So it definitely, like Pietrangeli said, it's, you know, its mark is to be anti-fascist, and from the women who were speaking out against their bosses in the fields to today's piazzas, I believe that is the thread, the narrative thread that holds true. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's true. I would add that the origins of the song are a very sad, is a very sad song about love, about this poor young girl who sees her lover with another woman and decides to commit suicide. We don't go into that very much because it's slightly off theme, but it is a song about suffering, that's for sure, and it always ends with a death and a flower. So it's a romantic death and a romantic suffering. It's romanticized, but it is about suffering. There's no doubt about it. It's not about winning anything. It's about resisting against suffering.
No, I think, and your film portrays that, and I'm sure you'll do. You come away after watching it feeling that absolutely. That's borne out wonderfully during the film. So you did an exceptional job there. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? We have a roving mic. If anyone would like to ask Andrea or Paul anything. I'm trying to see if there's any. Yep, we have a hand up over there. Abla's coming with her mic. Oh, we're doing pass it along. Lovely.
Thank you. I just wanted to make an observation. We're both musicians. We sing. My wife sings. I play the drums. We do this song on most of our gigs. For us, it's a pro-European, anti-Brexit orientated piece of music. That's our angle, as that's our generation. That's our that's our political angle. We had a dinner party with a young German lady who grew up in the DDR, and we were rather horrified when we announced that we did this song, and she looked at us. The mood changed, and she says, "I hate this song." And we went, "Well, what?" And she said, "I was forced to sing this song throughout my childhood, and for me, it's a song of oppression." And we were shocked and surprised and rather horrified. Hasn't stopped us doing the song, by the way, because for us, my wife's grandmother was a partisan, an Italian partisan, so there's a different narrative for us in the West. I just thought it was worth making this point. It kind of came out in your film with the Yves Montand 68 section, but I just thought I'd mention this because there is another angle for a certain group of people in a certain part of the world where the song becomes a rather sinister state repression anthem, and I think it's worth pointing out. I mean, as I say, it hasn't changed our outlook, and we continue and will continue to sing it and play it. Thank you.
Thank you. Your anecdote just is very is a relief to hear, because we put this story of the DDR and Bella Ciao behind the Iron Curtain in because we too were shocked by this account of this young man saying he was forced to sing it around the campfire. And then when we heard Yves Montagn's wife say he didn't sing that song after the Prague Spring for 15 years until he sang it for the Chileans, we were shocked by how much of an impact and how terrible it was for so many people that they even refused to sing the song anymore. So that was the point in the film that we tried ever so slightly to touch on that element. There was a lot. I was shocked. We were shocked by how complicated, how complex this film was to make. Let's not forget that we're talking about from 1930 to 2023. That's 80 years of history to put into 90 minutes with archive and multiple wars and multiple countries and multiple delicate political perspectives. So it was we bit off much more than we could chew. At least I thought we did, but I hope that we've done the song and the history of the song justice.
Can I just add something on that? As a matter of fact, we didn't put into the film, obviously because we didn't have time, and there's a lot of it's left on the cutting room floor. Our German interviewee actually says that they were very disillusioned by the DDR and that they were actually repressed. Their hootenanny clubs became singing clubs because they couldn't call it with an English name, and then and they were censored heavily, and they were very disillusioned by it. They continued singing, they continued doing it because that's what they did, and they hoped for a better DDR. But I think that they all came out thinking. There are some people who are still quite nostalgic about it as well, because it was order, it was they knew where they stood, and everything was they had jobs and all that. But but he certainly, unfortunately, we couldn't put into the film. We cut it out when he says we were actually forced to change our attitude to all these Western songs. They managed they first managed to get all the songs. They published the records, and then it was all shut down. So yeah, I mean, we obviously Lutz does know. Lived through it. So we could do a series. Yeah, I mean, it's the tip of an iceberg, really. I mean, not that we can't actually say much more than we've said, unfortunately. But I mean, not that anybody would watch. But but for sure, yeah. I mean, he too. Although he was part of the system, realizes that it was an oppressive system.
I think you may have also noticed it would have been very easy to veer off course to El Pueblo Unido or All Fiscal Vento, all the other protest songs. If I Had a Hammer, each of those songs has an incredible story, and it made us think, wouldn't it be great to do a series of on protest songs and the history behind them all? So we tried to get a little bit into each one of them with the Jose Seves talking about the difference or the what they had in common, songs like El Pueblo Unido and Bella Ciao, but not go too far off the path. So it was
Otherwise
a delicate
you would have
balance.
had hours.
Yeah, but I thought it was fairly brilliant how he musically transitioned from Bella Ciao into El Pueblo Unido. And in fact, we'd like to have more music if we had more time, because those were, I think, partly the most poetic moments of the film.
I agree. I'm a musician by trade many years ago, and I thought that was the most fascinating, as you say, poetic part of the film. No, it was beautifully done. Is there anyone else with a question? Oh, at the front, I can see you easily.
First of all, thank you, because that was a great way to celebrate the Liberation Day for me today. Do you think that it's so? Because one of the main question is that why is Bella Ciao so popular, and why has it been going on for so long? And maybe the reason why it's so popular is because it's so rooted in something that maybe we will never find out. Like all the songs that you mentioned, I know all of them. I've never sung those songs as many times as Bella Ciao. Like my mom would sing it to me while I was sleeping. Like it was an obsession. So maybe that could be one of the like the answers. Like we will never get to the complete root of this song because it's so old and it has so much to do with history that I think it's beautiful, but it's also like, oh, we will never find out where it came.
It's also very simple.
Yeah, I would just say that indeed we sort of threw up our hands, threw in the towel, and said we're not going to solve this. Let's just show its complexity. I mean, when Giovanna Marini says it goes back to, the Greek scale, and she says something else that didn't make it in the film was when she talked about Dante. So she takes it way back, and we thought, this is impossible. We're not going to get there. So let's just try to show how we came to know it today and tell that story. As Paul said, it's also very simple, and the rhythm it's easy to pick up, and the clapping. It's almost a song that the children also can. It's a lullaby many times for many people. And I thought it was interesting how Alex Pina talked about how it can be happy, it can be sang melancholy, it can be sang with many different rhythms. So it does have that variety that you can change it. I think you're right. I think the mystery is part of the attraction of Bella Ciao.
Yeah, I mean we've seen about 5 or 6 different versions, 5 or 6 different adaptations in the film. As they are, I mean, also musically, it can be varied. But I think that apart from that, it is like all traditional songs, very simple. Like what's it? Like Fra Martino. What's that in English? Frère Jacques. No, it's not Frère Jacques with the Bella Ciao melody, but it's they're all ancient melodies that probably were sung even before the Middle Ages. It's just a natural progression. Probably goes back to Roman times. I mean, who knows? Simple. The main thing is simple.
So I just want to add my thoughts on that as well, because as was said in the film as well, it's that fourth, isn't it? It's the fourth, which is so immediately endearing to 99% of people's ear, I think, which also makes it, and the repetition on the chorus. It musically it is simple, but it's wonderfully constructed. Even for its, and that's the beauty of music. Quite often, the most simple melodies and arrangements and rhythms are actually the most beautiful and the most. I suppose they have the most collective appeal, almost.
And that collective appeal, ends up in a Korean ad for Champ hamburger, which opens up a whole new can of worms, which we barely touched on, which was, does the commercialization of the song weaken it? Does it?
What do you think?
I think it does. But what Giovanna Marini said it best when she said, "This is the society we live in," and Alex Pina defends the other side, saying the commercialization has made it even bigger, better, more powerful with more people through Money Heist. So we left that there just as a debatable point. We tried not to take a stance. Let him say it. Let Giovanni Marini say the other side, and then show sort of how far it's gone with the Korean commercial.
Yeah, I mean, I can't add anything else. I mean, yeah, basically, I don't think it's been hurt in any way, because the more people I think it makes people think. First of all, they sing it, then they recognize it, then they think about where it comes from, and then they understand what it means. It can start with advertising and end up in politics. It could. It doesn't always work the other way around.
No, it's fascinating. And also, I suppose on that point, the more it seeps into the public psyche, none of us ever know when actually there might be that spark which will light up everyone's imagination and consciousness, I suppose, when actually then it will come full circle again, and people go, I didn't realise that song was about that. Actually, now I understand, and that this is why it's so important at this time, because we saw it with the climate protests in the film, the situation in Chile in the film, yeah, I'm on the fence with the commercialisation. It's kind of difficult. I'll probably wake up tomorrow morning and feel completely different. Is there any more questions from the audience? Anyone have anything or any thoughts?
Firstly, thank you so much for such an amazing piece of work. as my partner was saying, that it was my grandmother who was a partisan, my mum's mum. She was just 19, and I didn't grow up with her, so I didn't know anything about what she did. I didn't know anything about the song until coming to it as an adult and as a musician myself. But when we do play the song, we sort of have to explain the story a bit well, the lyrics is in the partisan version, because what I found happens is people do listen and respond to the music, probably because of the language. We do it in like 4 or 5 different European languages, and so you're not expecting that everyone would understand the lyrics. But I noticed that people lock into the rhythm and lock into the sort of the jubilant aspect of it. And if you don't contextualize it, then it kind of is a bit odd, because it's a very sad, moving lyric. You know, it's full of the yes, it's full of obviously the resistance and the sense of, I'm going to win this even if I die, because I've done it my way. But if you don't have that context around it, I think it does lose something. So I would say putting it in, what was it, the burger thing, is insane, personally. I mean, okay, maybe it helps to keep the music a bit alive, but I think it's also really important to remember where it came from. And on that point, I wasn't totally clear about the beginning origins. I'd always sort of known about it as the Mondina tradition, and less so about the song, the personal song of the woman who lost her lover. And even that version is very sad, isn't it? Because as I understand it, the women who worked in those paddy fields, many of them were sort of like refugees, or probably women with very few rights. And so I think there's pathos throughout all the versions of it, and that's to me as a singer and as a lyricist, that's almost more important than anything else about it. But thank you so much for all you did. It's been amazing to watch.
Thank you very much. I'd add to that we forget that fascist Italy was extremely poor, and fascism does not bring prosperity. So the Abruzzi women who went to the Piemonte paddy fields went because they had to, not because they wanted to. And so the sense of suffering in this song is what drags it along. I mean, apart from the rhythm and the easy lyrics, the sense of suffering, it is the tomb with a flower on it. It's not a cross, it's not anything else, it's just a flower. And in the shadow of the flower, the partisan will remember the dead person, you know. So it is extremely sad, but it's a love song. And I think that's the spirit of what happened under fascist Italy, a very poor country, in which people had to move long distances to get any work whatsoever to feed their families. The hype that in fact that Mussolini made the trains work on time and drain the marshes is like, you know, the tip of an iceberg of suffering and pain.
Sorry, and so pertinent now, isn't it, with what's happening in Italy again, and you know, the narrative about refugees, and you know, it couldn't be more pertinent. So
it is the right moment. Yeah. It is the right moment to keep singing Bella Ciao.
Yeah, literally came up on my phone earlier that a government minister said about an hour ago that refugees are a threat to the social cohesion of our country, and that, you know, this just flashed up on my phone as a Guardian article, and that's just one example of why that song is so relevant now, I think. Just to sum up, because I know we are on the clock, obviously, how are we doing for time? Yeah, we're good? Excellent. Does anyone have any more thoughts or questions? Anyone? Perfect. I'm interested in how you feel on a personal level about the film, actually, because when you look at it in the round, you've created. I mean, I don't want to. It's hard, I suppose it's hard in many respects to overstate. You've actually created a wonderful historical document here, because this expansive history of the song, coupled with what are now archived interviews of people who sadly aren't going to be around for much longer, or, as you, Andrea, rightly pointed out, have passed since, we will never get this testimony again, not least about the song, but also of the partisans during Mussolini's reign and the Second World War. I mean, how does it feel to have created not just a film, but an actual piece of living history now, if you like, that will now live and tell these stories and continue to tell these stories and have these people's voices on record? How does that feel on a personal level for you?
For me, it's been the most important project I've ever worked on, and the most gratifying, but also very difficult. We self-financed it. We didn't have much time. I would have loved more money, bigger budget, and more time, of course, like all directors say. But also, I think we can go back to it. I think there's more that can be done with those archived interviews. I don't think I'd like to do more. I'd like to pluck out some of the other pieces that hit the cutting room floor and do something else, or a podcast. There's a lot of music that we didn't use. But for me, being able to protect those stories and cross-reference them with other documents, and at least show without a doubt that this song was a part of the partisan resistance, for me, that was huge, because no more can anyone get up and say, well, it was or it wasn't, or it's my opinion. I don't think it was saying. Now we know, and we know because there are documents and oral testimonies that cross-reference one another, and that came from different and very varied aspects of our research that we drew together. For me, that was a mountain that we were able to climb, and a huge goal. And even though it's a low-budget film, we put our heart and soul into it, and so did all of the editors and the crew who worked on it. And I think that even though we didn't have a big budget, I think that you can feel that even the editors, how they use the music so delicately to transition from one song to the next, or one part of the film to the other. It just shows that it was a labor of love.
Well, I can't really add very much more than that. It was for us in all the films we make. Since right from the beginning, we've made 100 films, by the way, in the last 10 years. So every single film has been checked, cross-checked. We tend to be slightly overbearing, a little bit dense, maybe. People have criticized us because we're dense. We have a lot of information in our films sometimes. No, I don't mean we're dense like thick. I don't think we're thick at all. I think we're quite clever, actually. But I mean, our films are quite dense, have a lot of information in them. We like to do that because we get involved in them. So and since we are completely independent and nobody tells us what to do or what to say, we have all our contracts, or pre-acquisitions, or we have total freedom. And total control, and we promise our interviewees that we will not be forced by one person or another. And that's also one of the beauties of this. That's why we had such a low budget, because we also, how can I put it, we lost a contract with a big broadcaster for different reasons, not to do with the film, but for almost political reasons. Let's say political reasons. But that gave us independence. So we had a rush to get our film out early, and so I think I disagree with Andrea on this. I think the lower the budget, the better. It makes you work harder and think faster.
Yeah, I think we did struggle, but we're independent. We stayed indie. We self-financed. We didn't take any, we didn't have any sponsorization, and so we wrote all the scripts ourselves and found all the research and every single letter. And we found letters from dusty archives and some of this stuff, it's never been published before. It's absolutely new and original research, and I think we've taken the story forward.
And just on the point you made, actually, Paul, I'm interested, working in independent media myself. Given the how shall I put it, not just in this country, but we've seen it in the US as well recently with Fox News and Tucker Carlson. Given the trajectory of the more corporate media, do you think independent media, especially in film but also journalism, is more important than it ever has been now, because there is this within the corporate media, this real polarization to both the left and the right in some respects. Do you think independent media is important, and do you think it's going to survive as well? Because I know personally, I know a lot of independent outlets who are really struggling at the minute, financially as well.
I think to answer your last question first, it will survive, because also the costs of producing are much lower, which is also a problem, because a lot of people who are not professionally prepared get into production and make films that for purely commercial reasons, that then go and clog up, let's say, the schedules of the big broadcasters. We work in factual only, so we only make documentaries, and we don't do news. Although Andrea does as a journalist, but we don't do news. So what we can do, also because we live in Italy and we have access to these, and we have to say that we have access in Italy to incredible cinematographers, DOPs, editors, people who are very, very visual in their approach. So we're very lucky to have that, and I think that if you can work on a small budget, there's always going to be space for this kind of, as long as there are thinking people around, there's always going to be space for this kind of film. I think eventually the big corporate medias are going to kill themselves. I mean, they're just going to explode. Their costs are going to go over the top, and they'll become self-referential. They already are self-referential. And so they'll lose contact, like many of the politicians have lost contact with the real people. And that's why we think, I'm an optimist, and I think that independent people like us, as long as we can survive on small budgets and live a happy life doing what we do, we'll go on doing it. At least I don't have I'm old, so I'm going to do it for not a long time, but Andrea is much younger. She'll do it for much longer than me.
Well, I hope so. I think that I think that it is a luxury, but writing our own scripts and being able to, never having had a correction or an error or a lawsuit. So long as you're being very careful. But there are many people probably like us who are not as careful, and lies then get recirculated, which is very dangerous. And we've seen that even with Bella Ciao, with documentaries claiming that the partisans never sang it, and so it's also dangerous that anyone can do it. So it's sort of, there's now a level where if you have an iPhone and Movie Maker, you can almost make a documentary. But I think that independent. This is a great moment for independent film. Because there is so much opportunity on the platforms and with content, and they're losing control. They're losing their grip, the big corporate media behemoths, and I think that's a good thing for people like us.
Well, I have to agree with that, obviously, as an independent journalist, so of course. To wrap up on that note, actually, as well, and it will tie this all together nicely, what have you got in the pipeline at Millstream Films? What's coming up?
Yeah, another music documentary. Well, we have lots. And unfortunately, we have to survive, so we make a lot of films. But a big project going forward that's already taken us 2 years just to get to this point. This is really just to find the right director and to put together a minimum of financing. Is the story of the voice of Africa, Miriam Makeba, and this is a fortuitous, again, somebody up there or somewhere is piloting us, because we came across this opportunity by chance, by a number of people who suggested it. Well, we had this in mind, and then other people opened some doors for us, and one thing led to another, and so we're in a position now to start pitching it as a project. And it is another story of resistance, another story of suffering, and another story of great music. And Andrea, I'm sure, has a lot to add.
Well, I would just say that we have on board a young African-American woman, a director, who's of Somali origins, and that's a huge step forward. Also, I've done quite a few Freedom of Information Act requests with the United States government and discovered that she was absolutely under huge FBI surveillance from the moment she ever stepped on American soil. And so there's going to be actually a lot of great investigative angles. She was married to Stokely Carmichael, who was a Black Panther, and was, very involved in the Black Power movement. And so what will be shocking will be the resistance she was facing that has never been made public, but we will be making that public. It'll be a small part of the film, but it will be in there, and again, with original documents that we've unearthed. So I'm really excited to see, to have an African-American woman on board, young, she knows Miriam Makeba's music. I think she's the right person to tell the story. And it's going to be complicated as well, because Miriam Makeba was a global star who was, of course, exiled from the United States of America, but then came back after Nelson Mandela asked her to sing, and was brought back in by the Clinton administration. And then she died in Italy, which is part of the story of how we came upon her story, while doing a concert on behalf of the Roberto Saviano against the mafia in the south of Italy. So it's an incredible story that ends in Italy, and begins in South Africa and crosses through the United States of America and even London and Venice. So it's another one of these stories that's going to take us all over the world, be very difficult, but we're really excited about it. Another big music documentary. So look forward to that.
As a musician and as a journalist, that sounds absolutely wonderful. So it sounds absolutely fascinating. Look, I'm going to wrap it up. I think we can all agree that the film was enlightening, it was engaging, it was moving at points, but absolutely fascinating. And this wonderful historical document. It was really quite something to watch. And as I say, I was really privileged to watch it twice.
Thank you for your thoughtful questions, and for what pleasure. A wonderful audience. It's a great way for us too to celebrate the 25th of April. Thank you. Grazie mille.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out to watch the film. We do hope we'll see you again sometime. We'll be doing more of these screenings, but for the minute, thank you, and have a safe journey home. Okay, thank you so much.